How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. My name is John J. Thomas, and on this channel we just ride around on bikes and we talk about life. And I have something that's really cool and has been kind of my latest obsession that I want to talk about lately. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. Let me ask you a question. What do you think one of the most powerful skills that human beings possess is? I will make a strong argument for storytelling. Telling a good story is your key to getting remembered. The next time you go back to a social function, to be remembered when you meet somebody and you want to ask them on a date, greatly increases your chances of getting a job or a raise. Being able to tell a story greatly increases your chances of just finding success in life. Overall, people are drawn to stories, and there's a lot of interesting research as to why stories have been important since our existence. Before we had video, we had audio. Before we had audio, we had paper and pen. But before all of that, traditions, lessons, history, all of this was passed down through storytelling. We all think back to our ancestors sitting around the fire, listening to the elders tell stories. We look to religious texts, powerful religious texts, I might add. Like the best-selling book of all time is the Bible. And that is made up consistently of stories. Even the Psalms, which are, poems and songs, are telling stories. And think about it that way, is how many of the biggest songs in history are stories that are being told. Think of what are the classics now, right? Journey, Don't Stop Believing, telling the story of just a city boy born and raised in South Detroit. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Free Fallin', She's a Good Girl, Billy Joel, Piano Man. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. You can look at Johnny Cash, prolific storyteller. Chuck Berry, storyteller in a lot of his songs. Now look, is that every song was a story? No. What I am pointing out is, hey, look at the power of stories. But look at the impact, again, going from the Bible and what's being passed down, regardless of whether or not you believe in it, are stories, tradition, code of ethics, a way to live your life. Stories communicate things so much better than just simply telling people things. You could, slip in there. You could just sit there and say, here are your 10 commandments, and then just expect people to live through that and try to remember those. Whoa, slipping like crazy. Or you can give those 10 commandments and then describe why they're important through stories. And the Bible does that consistent. Other religious texts obviously do this as well. Look at other things that we've learned. Aesop's fables, all stories, passing things down, telling people, hey, here's a story on how to live a good life. 1984 gave people something to be concerned about with the dystopian future. Animal Farm discussed the Soviet Union and the downfall and the dangers of communism and such. Shakespeare and the plays, how influential those are, how powerful those are. Ernest Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea, my favorite book, for example, told in story format. And you even look at a modern book, a self-help book actually, The 5 a.m. Club, written in a story format. All this very interesting research and data and philosophy, all presented in a fictional story format. And the funny thing is I've talked to a few different people who've read that book, and all of them have said, wow, that was one of the most powerful self-help books I've ever read. If you look at other self-development books, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, which I would say is my personal most powerful self-development, self-help book that I've ever read. Throughout all these things, he's telling the stories of how he met people, of how they figured this stuff out, and he intertwines it through a hunt that he took for a month out in Alaska. Throughout the whole book, it all ties back in. And that story is what helps you remember. So that's what makes storytelling so powerful, is that, one, its ability to impact us mentally, emotionally, and literally, physically, but also because we remember things much better in story format. Some proof to show you that I'm not just pulling your leg about the powerful effects of storytelling. This blows my mind. It's super cool that when humans are watching a movie or when they're hearing a story, our heart rates all kind of align pretty well. We're all feeling roughly the same thing, and we're experiencing the same physical responses at the same time. The power that a storyteller has over the audience is not only captivating and keeping their attention, but it's also literally making them feel and experience something physically. You may be thinking, all right, well, how do I tell a story then? And that depends. It depends on the situation, it depends on your audience, it depends on a variety of circumstances. To get started, you can kind of think about things as a journey. And one of the most common journeys is the hero's journey. Someone's a normal person living a normal life. Something happens that is preventing them from getting what they want or from continuing on with how they were. And they have to then resolve that issue to get back having the normal life or to get what they want. Let's say you're going up for a promotion at work. Think about how you can frame your argument of, here's the things that I've done, this is why I deserve a raise. You could go in there and say, I increased our productivity by 20%, increased this by 80%, and I cut costs by 10%. However, you could also go in framing this as a story, talking to your boss saying, you know, hey, last year we were facing increased competition and we're facing increased inflation. You know, we had to figure out a way to boost productivity and save money in certain areas to not only remain competitive, but to also provide the best quality we could for our customer. Hey, here we were a normal company doing good, and then here's this issue that we faced. Now we bring in the hero, right? AKA you. But don't take all the credit. You know, you got to frame you, your boss, your team, your company as the hero here. So now what you can do is you can go in and say, I took a look at these different sheets. I talked with the team. One of our goals that we set was to increase our sales by whatever percent, or whatever the stat I used earlier was. But we tried this and this didn't work, so we tried this and this didn't work, so we sat down in the meeting and then we thought, well, what if we tried this? So we came up with a plan with some trial and error. We were able to do this by this date, thank you, at this point in time. And now we're back on track. We're meeting our goals. Okay, so what you just did is you invoked some feeling, some anticipation, some desire. All of a sudden, your chances of actually getting that promotion are much higher. Your boss is going to remember that much more rather than just throwing out stats. You made them physically feel something, which is going to make them more likely to actually like you. You did some really great things. One is the frame. The second thing you got to think of and you got to look at is the use of metaphors. How can you make people feel something? So when you are telling these stories and you're giving these details, or you're using metaphors, you want to use words that can literally make them feel something and be able to relate to that feeling by using descriptive words and using words that can describe details that relate back to your five senses, right? Your sense of touch, smell, hearing, sight, and taste. Now you don't need to use all of them, but using words such as sharp, you know, you can imagine what feeling sharp is. You can describe that feeling, that touch of, man, we were really struggling earlier that year. We were kind of in the hot seat. We were sweating a little bit. We weren't sure what was coming next. We could feel that pressure of the competitors breathing down our necks. Again, using those words that make people physically feel something. They can relate to it. And finally, another thing that we can do is actually use mini stories within the story, right? If you know your boss likes sports and you can think of like, man, I was so excited here that, you know, it felt like that one game back from 2009 when the Giants were playing insert whoever here, we were behind and all of a sudden, you know, Hail Mary, went for it, tied it up, kicked the extra point. It was tipped, but it made it in, and man, won that game, went on to the Super Bowl. I have no idea who went to the Super Bowl in 2009, by the way. I'm just spitballing there. Telling those little stories like that, again, helps them relate to something that they know. They already know that story. They like that story. And they can remember how good it felt seeing that story unfold. And now all of a sudden, man, they just felt that a little bit again. Anyways, folks, that is all that I have for today. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you. Go forth, tell a good story, be remembered. And as always, until next time, have a great day.